I am Rebecca, 27 years old, and the perpetually overlooked middle child. 9 months pregnant, I never imagined my own family would abandon me. When my contractions started during our family road trip to my sister Allison's award ceremony, my mother looked at me with cold eyes. "Pull over," she told my dad. On a deserted highway, she made their priorities clear. "We cannot be late. Allison needs peace and silence. Your timing is inconsiderate." They drove away, leaving me doubled over in pain. What happened next changed everything. Before I continue this unbelievable story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and stay until the end to see how I made them beg for forgiveness. Growing up as the middle child between Allison and Eric was like living in permanent shadows. Allison was 3 years older, blessed with our mother's beauty and our father's intellect. She was their pride and joy from the moment she was born. I still remember my 10th birthday when my parents showed up 2 hours late because Allison had a minor dance recital. They missed my solo performance entirely, but the next day, our living room was filled with people celebrating Allison winning 3rd place in a regional science fair. Our family photo albums told the story better than words ever could. Dozens of pictures of Allison at competitions, ceremonies, and special dinners. Then there was me, usually photographed as an afterthought, often partially cropped out or blurry. My brother Eric got similar treatment, though being the only boy afforded him slightly more attention than I received. "Rebecca, why can't you be more like your sister?" became the unofficial family motto when I brought home straight as my father would briefly nod before asking Allison about her latest project. When I won 2nd place in a statewide writing competition in high school, my mother's response was, "That's nice. But did you hear Allison got accepted to Princeton?" Eric and I developed a silent bond of solidarity. As the youngest, he understood what it meant to live in Allison's shadow. We would exchange knowing glances across the dinner table when our parents spent the entire meal discussing Allison's accomplishments. Sometimes we would sneak out to get ice cream together after particularly difficult family gatherings, a small rebellion and comfort in our shared experience of being forgotten. Despite everything, I worked hard. I got into a good state university with a partial scholarship. My parents attended my high school graduation only because Allison was home from college that weekend and wanted to go shopping nearby. They sat through the ceremony looking bored, checking their watches frequently. That night, they took us all out to dinner, supposedly to celebrate my graduation. But somehow the conversation revolved entirely around Allison's summer internship plans. College was my escape. For the first time, I was judged on my own merits. I thrived in my classes, made genuine friends who valued me, and gradually built my self-confidence. In my sophomore year, I met Nathan in an American literature class. He was quiet but thoughtful, with kind eyes that actually saw me. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's thoughts and dreams. Nathan came from a warm, boisterous family who welcomed me immediately. The first time I joined them for dinner, his mother asked me about my interests, and actually listened to my answers. His father proudly displayed a poem I had written for their anniversary on their refrigerator for months. It was like discovering water after a lifetime in the desert. After graduation, Nathan and I moved in together. We both found jobs in the same city, about 2 hours from my parents' home. I called them every Sunday out of obligation, brief conversations that usually ended with updates about Allison's latest achievements. When Nathan proposed after 3 years together, my parents' response was tepid at best. "Are you sure you're ready for that commitment?" my mother asked, the unspoken comparison to Allison, who was focused on her career rather than relationships, hung in the air. Our wedding was small but beautiful. Nathan's family handled most of the arrangements, while my parents contributed the minimum they could without appearing completely uninvolved. Allison was my maid of honor, not by my choice, but because my mother insisted it would hurt her feelings to be excluded from the spotlight. She gave a speech that was more about herself than about me or Nathan. When I discovered I was pregnant a year later, Nathan was ecstatic. We spent nights talking about names, decorating the nursery, and imagining our future as parents. I delayed telling my family until I was past the first trimester, knowing their reaction would diminish my joy. I was right. My mother's first response was, "Well, I suppose it was bound to happen eventually." My father asked if this meant I would be quitting my job. No congratulations, no excitement, just practical concerns and thinly veiled disappointment. Allison called a week later to say she was happy for me but spent most of the call talking about her nomination for a prestigious industry award. As my pregnancy progressed, Nathan's family showered us with support. His mother organized a beautiful baby shower, his father built a crib by hand, and his sisters took turns bringing us home-cooked meals during my difficult third trimester. My parents sent a generic card with a modest check. The final straw came when Allison announced that the ceremony for her award would be held the weekend of my due date. Instead of acknowledging the conflict, my parents immediately began making plans to attend, assuming I would understand that this was too important to miss. When I pointed out that I was about to give birth, my mother actually suggested that first. Babies are usually late anyway, and I should join them on the 4-hour road trip to the ceremony. My doctor explicitly advised against traveling so close to my due date, but my family pressured me relentlessly. "You've always been jealous of Allison's success," my mother accused when I hesitated. "This is the biggest moment of her career." Against my better judgment and Nathan's concerned objections, I agreed to go. Part of me still desperately wanted their approval, still hoped that somehow being accommodating would finally make them see me. Nathan had an unavoidable work commitment but made me promise to call him at the first sign of labor. As we packed for the trip, I never imagined how catastrophically wrong things would go. The morning of the road trip dawned bright and clear, a beautiful June day that gave no hint of the trauma to come. Nathan helped me into the car when my parents arrived, his worry evident in the tight lines around his mouth. "Call me if anything happens, anything at all," he insisted, pressing his phone charger into my hand as an afterthought. "I love you both," he added, placing a gentle hand on my swollen belly. My mother honked the horn impatiently. "We need to get going if we're going to make good time," she called through the open window. No greeting, no asking how I was feeling, just urgency about the schedule. My father sat silently in the driver's seat, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Allison had the entire back seat to herself, surrounded by garment bags containing outfit options for her big moment. I was wedged into the middle row beside her luggage, my pregnant body crammed uncomfortably against the door. The irony wasn't lost on me that her clothes had more space than I did. "You look terrible," were Allison's first words to me as I struggled to fasten my seatbelt around my belly. "Did you even try to put on makeup? The photographers will want family pictures." I bit back a retort about not wanting to look my best while 9 months pregnant in summer heat. "Good morning to you too," I said instead, attempting to find a position that didn't put pressure on my lower back. The first hour of the journey passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by Allison's occasional phone calls with colleagues about the ceremony. My parents listened rapidly to her every word, nodding and smiling with pride. I gazed out the window, already regretting my decision to come. Around the 2-hour mark, I felt the first twinge. It wasn't painful, just a tightening sensation across my abdomen that made me catch my breath. I dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions, the practice contractions my doctor had told me about. 20 minutes later, another one came, slightly stronger. "Could we stop at the next rest area?" I asked during a lull in Allison's conversation. "I need to use the bathroom." My mother sighed heavily. "We'd just stopped an hour ago. Can't you hold it? We're trying to make good time." "I'm pregnant, Mom. My bladder is basically the size of a walnut right now." "Fine," my father grumbled, flicking on his turn signal to exit. At the approaching rest stop, the brief walk to the bathroom brought another contraction, this one strong enough to make me pause and lean against the wall. A middle-aged woman noticed and approached me with concern. "Are you all right, honey? How far along are you?" 9 months, I admitted. "Just some Braxton Hicks, I think." She looked skeptical. "Those seem pretty strong for practice contractions. Do you know how far apart they are?" I hadn't been timing them, but her question planted the first seed of worry. In the bathroom stall, I noticed a small amount of pinkish discharge and felt my heart rate accelerate. This was one of the signs my doctor had mentioned. When I returned to the car, I found my family impatiently waiting. "Finally," Allison muttered. "At this rate, we'll barely have time to check into the hotel before the pre-ceremony reception." I should have spoken up then. Should have told them about the contractions and the discharge. Instead, I silently climbed back into my cramped seat, a lifetime of minimizing my needs, overriding my growing concern. The next hour became increasingly uncomfortable. The contractions, We're definitely coming at regular intervals now, roughly 15 minutes apart. I tried to breathe through them quietly, not wanting to draw attention or complaints. During a particularly sharp one, I must have made a sound because Allison turned to me with an irritated expression. Could you not? I'm trying to mentally prepare for my speech. Sorry, I whispered, gripping the door handle as the pain peaked and subsided. By the third hour of the journey, the contractions were coming every 12 minutes and impossible to hide. I was shifting constantly, trying to find any position that offered relief. Rebecca, can you please sit still? My mother snapped. You're distracting your father from driving. I think I might be in labor. I finally admitted, the words falling into a suddenly silent car. That's not funny, my mother said after a beat. I'm not joking. I've been having regular contractions for the past 2 hours. They're getting stronger and closer together. Allison immediately threw her hands up in exasperation. Are you serious right now? This is my weekend. The ceremony is tomorrow. My father's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. The first time he'd really looked at me all day. Are you sure it's not just false labor? That happens, right? I don't think so. This feels real. As if to emphasize my point, another contraction gripped me, stronger than before. I couldn't help the small moan that escaped my lips. Oh my God. Could you be any more dramatic? Allison rolled her eyes. She's obviously just trying to get attention. I fumbled for my phone, intending to call Nathan, only to find it completely dead. In my haste to leave that morning, I had forgotten to charge it overnight. The charger Nathan had given me was designed for a different phone model. I need to charge my phone, I said, panic rising in my voice. I need to call Nathan and my doctor. We don't have the right adapter, my father replied shortly. You'll have to wait until we reach the hotel. The next contraction came only 8 minutes after the previous one, a red flag, according to everything I had read. Then, while trying to shift positions again, I felt a warm gush between my legs. My water just broke, I announced, mortification mixing with fear as wetness spread across the car seat. The car swerved slightly as my father processed this information. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, I nearly shouted, another contraction already building. You need to take me to a hospital right now. My mother turned around in her seat, her face a mask of conflicted emotions. The nearest hospital is probably back the way we came. We'd missed the reception entirely. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, I'm having a baby. Your grandchild. Can't you just hold it in a little longer? Allison asked, seemingly serious. We could go to the ceremony and then find a hospital afterward. The absurdity of her question would have made me laugh if another contraction hadn't chosen that moment to tear through me. This one was different, more intense, making me cry out involuntarily. For God's sake, Walter, pull over. My mother finally instructed my father. She's being too loud. My father guided the car onto the shoulder of the highway, a desolate stretch with nothing but fields on either side. The nearest exit sign indicated a small town was still 5 miles ahead. Through the haze of pain, I heard them discussing options in low, urgent voices. The contractions were coming faster now, barely giving me time to recover between them. Look, my mother finally said, turning to face me, the ceremony venue is only an hour away. There's a hospital near there. Allison needs to be at this reception. It's crucial for networking. You can't be serious, I gasped, clutching my abdomen. I need a hospital now. The baby isn't coming this minute, she reasoned, though she had no way of knowing that. First labors typically take hours. We'll drop you at the emergency room as soon as we get Allison to her reception.no, I protested, reaching for the door handle. I'm not getting back on the highway. Call an ambulance. My father stepped out and came around to my door. For a moment, I thought he was going to help me, maybe even take my side. Instead, he helped me out of the car and retrieved my overnight bag from the trunk, setting it beside me on the gravel shoulder. There's a town a few miles that way, he said, pointing down the highway. Someone will stop and help you. You can't leave me here. I was sobbing now, partly from pain and partly from the shocking realization that they were actually going to abandon me. My mother leaned out the window. Don't be so dramatic, Rebecca. This is your sister's big moment, and you're trying to ruin it like you always do. She needs peace and silence to prepare. Call Nathan. I pleaded. At least let me use your phone. We'll call him from the hotel, my father promised, already walking back to the driver's side. Someone will come along soon. The last thing I saw as they pulled away was Allison's face in the back window, a mixture of relief and something that might have been guilt quickly replaced by her rehearsing her acceptance speech. I stood on the side of the highway, a contraction building, as I watched my family's car disappear around a bend. I had never felt so alone or betrayed in my entire life. The reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow as my family's car disappeared from sight. I was alone on a rural highway, in active labor, with no phone and no transportation. A contraction seized me, and I doubled over, bracing myself against my suitcase as waves of pain radiated through my body. "This isn't happening," I gasped when the contraction finally eased. They wouldn't really leave me, but the empty highway stretching in both directions confirmed the unthinkable truth. They had chosen Allison's award ceremony over my safety and that of their unborn grandchild. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. I needed to focus on immediate survival. The June sun beat down mercilessly, and I could already feel sweat beading on my forehead. I dragged my suitcase toward a cluster of trees about 30 yards from the road, offering the only shade in sight. Each step was an effort, my body heavy and unwieldy. Another contraction hit just as I reached the trees. I sank to the ground, leaning against a broad trunk, trying to remember the breathing techniques from my childbirth classes. In 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. The pain peaked, held, then gradually subsided when I could think clearly again. I took stock of my resources. My suitcase contained clothes for the weekend, basic toiletries, and my prenatal vitamins. My purse held my dead phone, wallet, a small first aid kit, a protein bar, and a bottle of water. Not much to work with. I looked up and down the highway, hoping to see approaching cars, but the road remained eerily empty. This route had seemed busy when we were driving, but now it felt abandoned. I tried standing at the roadside, waving frantically. The one time a truck appeared in the distance, but it sped past without slowing, the driver not even glancing my way. The contractions were coming about 6 minutes apart now. I remembered my doctor saying that when contractions were 5 minutes apart, it was time to go to the hospital. The irony wasn't lost on me. With shaking hands, I unzipped a side pocket of my suitcase and found what I was looking for, the emergency birth plan my doctor had insisted I carry, just in case. At the time, it had seemed like an unnecessary precaution. Now it might save our lives. I skimmed the laminated card, trying to absorb the information between contractions, clean environment, comfortable position, support person, sterile tools if possible. The list of recommended items included clean towels, scissors, string or shoelaces, and sterile gloves, none of which I had. The next contraction was intense enough to make me cry out. As it passed, I remembered Dr. Marshall's voice from my last appointment. "If you ever find yourself needing to deliver without medical help, remember that women have been giving birth since the beginning of humanity. Your body knows what to do." I had to believe that now, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. I took inventory of my surroundings more carefully. The ground beneath the trees was relatively clean, covered with pine needles rather than mud. I had a few tissues in my purse that I could use to wipe my hands. My nail scissors weren't ideal, but they were clean and sharp enough to cut the umbilical cord if necessary. I could use shoelaces from my sneakers to tie it off. Another car appeared in the distance. I struggled to my feet, waving both arms overhead and shouting despite knowing they probably couldn't hear me. Like the truck before it, the car continued. Without slowing, I sank back to the ground, a sob escaping my throat. My thoughts turned to Nathan. By now he would be wondering why I hadn't called. Would he try to reach my parents? Would they even tell him what had happened? I pictured him pacing our apartment, growing increasingly worried. The thought of him not knowing where I was or what was happening brought fresh tears to my eyes. The contractions were definitely closer. Together now, perhaps 5 minutes apart. I tried to focus on the practical. I removed my cardigan and laid it on the ground as a makeshift blanket. I took small sips of water, knowing I needed to stay hydrated. I rummaged through my suitcase and found a clean t-shirt that could serve as a swaddling blanket. Between contractions, memories of my childbirth classes floated through my mind. The instructor demonstrating different labor positions, information about stages of labor, warning signs of complications. I tried to recall everything, desperate for any knowledge that might help. I remembered that first-time labor typically lasted 12 to 24 hours, but my labor had progressed quickly so far. How long had it been since my water broke? 2 hours? 3? Time seemed to stretch and compress in strange ways as I alternated between pain and exhausted relief. At some point, I became aware that I was entering transition, the most intense phase of labor. The contractions were now coming 3 minutes apart and lasting longer. The urge to push was building, my body taking over in ways I couldn't control. I tried calling Stephanie, my best friend, using the emergency call feature that sometimes worked even on a locked phone. The call connected but immediately dropped. The single bar of reception vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The sun was lower in the sky now, the shadows lengthening. How long had I been here? My throat was dry despite my careful rationing of water. I was exhausted, terrified, and increasingly accepting that I might have to deliver this baby completely alone. Between contractions, I arranged my makeshift birthing area as best I could. Cardigan on the ground, t-shirt nearby for the baby, nail, scissors sterilized with hand sanitizer, shoelaces removed from my sneakers, water bottle positioned within reach. As another powerful contraction gripped me, I found myself thinking of my grandmother, my father's mother, who had told me stories of giving birth to my uncle during a blizzard when the ambulance couldn't reach their rural home. Women are stronger than they know, she had said. When the time comes, you find strength you never knew you had. I hoped she was right because the time had definitely come. The contractions were now relentless, the pressure overwhelming. My body was telling me to push and I had no choice but to listen. Please, I whispered to the empty air, to anyone or anything that might be listening. Please help us. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the highway in golden light, I prepared to bring my child into the world, alone at the side of a road where my own family had abandoned me. But in that moment, a fierce determination replaced my fear. If I could do this, deliver my own baby with no help and no support, I could do anything, including making my family face the consequences of their actions. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of sensation as my body took control. The pushing phase brought a different kind of pain, more purposeful and directed. Each contraction now came with an overwhelming urge that consumed me entirely. Between them, I had barely enough time to catch my breath and prepare for the next wave. You can do this, I told myself, voicing the encouragement I desperately needed to hear. Women have been doing this forever. Your body knows what to do. I positioned myself as I remembered from my birthing classes, semi-reclined against the base of the largest tree, my legs bent and spread. The position felt instinctively right, giving me something to brace against. During contractions, as the next wave built, I bore down with it, pushing with all my strength. The pressure was immense, like nothing I had ever experienced. I cried out, not caring anymore if anyone heard me. There was no room for embarrassment or restraint. Now, between contractions, my mind flashed back to the birthing videos we had watched in class, the instructor's calm voice explaining the stages. When the baby's head begins to crown, try to pant instead of push to allow for a gentler stretch. I reached down and felt something I hadn't before, the top of my baby's head, just beginning to emerge. The sensation sent a shock of reality through me. This was happening, right here, right now. The next contraction brought the ring of fire the instructor had warned about, an intense burning sensation as the baby's head stretched the birth canal. I remembered to pant, short, shallow breaths instead of pushing, giving my body time to stretch. Slow, slow, I murmured to myself, fighting the urge to push hard and get it over with, just a little longer. With the next contraction, I felt the head emerge completely in a rush of relief. I reached down with trembling hands to make sure the umbilical cord wasn't wrapped around the neck. It wasn't. One small mercy, one more big push, I whispered, gathering my remaining strength. The next contraction came almost immediately, and I pushed with everything I had. There was a sliding sensation, and suddenly my baby was fully born, slipping into my waiting hands. Time seemed to stop as I lifted my child onto my chest, a girl. I had a daughter. She was covered in vernix and birth fluids, her tiny face scrunched and purple. For one terrifying moment, she was silent, and my heart seized. Please cry, I begged, gently rubbing her back and clearing fluid from her nose and mouth with my finger, as I'd been taught. Please be okay. As if she heard me, she gave a small cough and then let out a lusty wail that was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Tears streamed down my face as I held her close, this perfect tiny person who had just made her way into the world under the most unimaginable circumstances. "Hello, Lily," I said, the name we had chosen months ago suddenly perfect. For this resilient little flower who had bloomed despite everything. "I'm your mom." We did it. The placenta delivered itself shortly after, the final physical connection between us severed. I used my nail scissors to cut the umbilical cord after tying it off with a shoelace, working carefully despite my shaking hands. Everything I did felt surreal, as if I were watching someone else perform these intimate, primal tasks. I cleaned Lily as best I could with tissues and wrapped her in my clean t-shirt. She quieted against my chest, her newborn eyes squinting up at me with an expression that seemed impossibly wise and knowing. We had shared this incredible journey together, just the two of us. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the highway. The temperature was dropping, and I realized we couldn't stay here much longer. Lily needed proper medical attention, and so did I. I was exhausted, sore, and still bleeding, but at least the immediate danger had passed. As I sat there holding my daughter, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, unlike before. They slowed as they approached. The vehicle, a large pickup truck, pulled onto the shoulder about 20 feet away. A woman stepped out, approaching cautiously. "Are you okay?" she called, then stopped short as she took in the scene, me leaning against the tree, clearly just having given birth, a newborn wrapped in a t-shirt in my arms. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Did you just?" "Yes," I answered simply, too exhausted for explanations. "We need to get to a hospital." The woman, Miranda, I would later learn, didn't waste time with questions. She helped me to my feet with gentle efficiency, gathered my belongings, and assisted me into the passenger seat of her truck, cranking the heat despite the warm June evening. "I'm a nurse," she explained as she carefully arranged blankets from her emergency kit around Lily and me. "Not obstetrics, but I know enough. You both look good, all things considered, but we need to get you checked out properly." As Miranda pulled back onto the highway, driving with careful speed toward the nearest hospital, I finally allowed myself to fully process what had happened. My own parents had abandoned me in active labor on the side of a highway they had chosen. My sister's award ceremony over the safety of their daughter and grandchild. The magnitude of their betrayal washed over me in waves. All my life, I had made excuses for their favoritism, tried to earn their love and approval, but this was unforgivable. They had shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. "Do you want to call someone?" Miranda asked, offering her phone. "The father? Family?" I thought about Nathan, worried sick by now. "Yes, my husband," I said, taking the phone with a grateful nod. But as for my family, they would find out soon enough what they had missed, and they would have to live with the consequences of their choice for the rest of their lives. Looking down at Lily's perfect face, peaceful in sleep after her dramatic entrance into the world, I made a silent promise. She would never know what it felt like to be second best. She would never question her worth or her place in my heart. The cycle ended here. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to her, believing it for the first time. "We have each other now." The hospital emergency entrance blazed with light against the darkening sky as Miranda pulled up to the doors. Within seconds, medical staff surrounded the truck, alerted by Miranda's call ahead. A nurse named Grace carefully took Lily from my arms while an orderly helped me onto a gurney. The sudden flurry of activity was disorienting after hours of solitary struggle. 27-year-old female, unassisted roadside delivery approximately 1 hour ago. Miranda was explaining to someone in scrubs. "Mother and baby appear stable but need full evaluation." I was wheeled through automatic doors into the bright fluorescence of the emergency department. Lily was taken in another direction, which sent a spike of panic through me until Grace assured me they were just taking her to the neonatal assessment area. "Standard procedure," she explained kindly. "We'll bring her right back to you." A doctor introduced herself as Emily Chin, her calm efficiency immediately reassuring. "You've been through quite an ordeal," she said, checking my vital signs. "Let's make sure you're both okay." The next hour passed in a blur of examinations, questions, and procedures. Dr. Chin confirmed that despite the circumstances, I had managed a textbook delivery. Lily was pronounced healthy at 6 pounds 8 ounces, with perfect Apgar scores. They cleaned us both up, gave me stitches for a minor tear, started antibiotics as a precaution, and moved us to a private room in the maternity ward. Throughout it all, Questions about my circumstances were inevitable. Where is your family? Why were you alone on the highway? Who was supposed to be with you? I gave the simplest version of the truth, watching their expressions shift from confusion to disbelief to outrage. Grace's professional demeanor cracked momentarily when I explained that my parents had left me there to attend my sister's award ceremony. They what? She exclaimed, then quickly composed herself. I'm sorry, I've been a labor and delivery nurse for 15 years, and I've never heard anything like that. A hospital social worker named Mrs. Thompson came to see me, her clipboard and gentle questioning making it clear that the situation had triggered mandatory reporting protocols. Abandoning a woman in active labor could be considered criminal endangerment. She explained carefully, especially since you were left without means of communication or transportation. The thought hadn't occurred to me until that moment. Could my parents actually face legal consequences? The idea was both shocking and, I had to admit, somewhat satisfying. Meanwhile, the hospital staff had contacted Nathan using the number I'd given them. He arrived less than 2 hours later, bursting through the door with wild eyes and disheveled hair, having broken every speed limit between our home and the hospital. Rebecca, he rushed to my bedside, gathering me carefully into his arms. I've been going out of my mind. Your parents weren't answering their phones, and when I finally reached your dad, he just said there had been a situation and that you were at a hospital but wouldn't tell me which one. I've been calling every hospital within 100 miles. His gaze fell on Lily, sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside my bed. His expression transformed instantly, anger giving way to wonder. Is that, he whispered, your daughter? I confirmed, smiling despite my exhaustion. Lily Grace Thompson. He approached the bassinet with reverent steps, gently touching Lily's tiny hand with one finger. When she reflexively grasped it, his eyes filled with tears. She's perfect, he breathed. Then, looking back at me with a mixture of love and anguish. But how? What happened? Why weren't you with your parents? I told him everything, watching his face cycle through disbelief, horror, and finally a cold, controlled fury I had never seen in him before. They left you there. His voice was dangerously quiet. On the side of the road? In labor? I nodded, my own anger resurging as I relived the experience through his reaction. Where are they now? He demanded. Still at Allison's ceremony, I assume. They haven't called or anything. Nathan pulled out his phone, his jaw clenched tight. I'm calling them. Wait, I said, catching his wrist. Let me think about this. I want to handle it my way. Before we could discuss it further, my phone, now charged thanks to the hospital staff, lit up with an incoming call. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Nathan's expression darkened. Now they call. I took a deep breath and answered, putting the phone on speaker. Rebecca? My mother's voice sounded cheerful, with the artificial brightness she always adopted in public settings. How are you doing? Did you make it to a hospital? The casual tone, as if she were inquiring about a minor inconvenience, rather than a life-threatening abandonment, left me momentarily speechless. Yes, I finally managed. No thanks to you. Now, don't be dramatic, she chided. Everything worked out, didn't it? Anyway, the ceremony was wonderful. Allison's speech brought everyone to their feet. We're at the celebration. Dinner now, but we thought we should check in. In the background, I could hear the clink of glasses and murmur of conversation. They were at a party while I was recovering from giving birth alone on the side of a highway. The baby came, I said flatly, on the roadside where you left me. A brief silence then. What? Already? But first babies usually take so long. Not this one. I delivered her myself. No doctor, no medication, no support. Just me alone, where you abandoned me. Another pause. Well, congratulations. Is she healthy? What did you name her? The disconnect between the situation and her response was so vast it was almost laughable. Nathan looked like he might break the phone with his bare hands. Mrs. Thompson, he interjected, his voice tight with controlled rage. Your daughter could have died. Your granddaughter could have died. Do you understand that? Nathan, please. My mother replied dismissively. There was a town nearby. We knew someone would stop eventually. Eventually? Nathan's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. Do you hear yourself? Look, my father's voice came on the line now. What's done is done. We'll come by the hospital tomorrow after we check out of the hotel. Allison wants to meet her niece. Allison wants, I repeated incredulously. After what you all Did you think you get to just waltz in here like nothing happened? Rebecca, my mother's voice again, sharper now. I understand you're emotional right now, but there's no need for this attitude. We're family. Family doesn't leave family to give birth alone on the side of a road. I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded despite the storm of emotions. Inside me, I need time to process this. I'll let you know when I'm ready to see you. I ended the call before they could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. They don't get it, Nathan said quietly. They genuinely don't understand what they did wrong. They never have. I replied, a lifetime of being overlooked and dismissed crystallizing in that moment. But this time it's different. This time I'm not just going to accept it and move on. Mrs. Thompson returned shortly after, explaining that the hospital administrator had been informed of the circumstances and was deeply concerned. Abandoning a woman in active labor constitutes criminal negligence at minimum. She explained the hospital is required to report this to authorities. I wanted to let you know before we proceed. I looked at Nathan, then at Lily sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm surrounding her birth. My anger was justified. But did I want my parents to face criminal charges? Did I want that to be part of Lily's story? I need to think about this. I told Mrs. Thompson, can I let you know my decision tomorrow? She nodded understandingly. Of course. This is a lot to process, especially right after giving birth. Just know that whatever you decide, the hospital will support you. After she left, Nathan sat beside me on the bed, carefully cradling Lily in his arms. What are you thinking? He asked softly. I leaned against his shoulder, watching our daughter's peaceful face. I'm thinking that I have power here. For once, I get to decide how this plays out, and I want them to understand exactly what they did, to feel the weight of it. But mostly, I want to protect Lily from ever feeling the way I did growing up. Then that's what we'll do, Nathan promised, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Together, as we sat there, our new family complete despite everything that had happened, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, the anger too. But alongside them was a newfound strength and clarity. My parents and Allison had shown me who they truly were. Now I would show them who I had become. The hospital room door swung open the next morning to reveal my parents and Allison, looking fresh and well-rested in contrast to my exhausted state. My mother carried a small gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top, while my father held what appeared to be Allison's award, still in its presentation box. Allison herself was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as they entered. Nathan, who had spent the night in the recliner beside my bed after refusing to leave us, straightened immediately, his posture tense and protective. We had discussed our approach extensively after a night of interrupted sleep and nursing sessions. With Lily, I felt calm, centered in a way I never had when confronting my family before. There you are, my mother said, as if I had been the one who was difficult to locate. We brought a little something for the baby. She set the gift bag on the side table without actually looking at Lily, who was sleeping in the bassinet. And look, my father added, holding up the award. Allison brought her trophy to show you. Quite an honor. Everyone was talking about it. Allison finally looked up from her phone. The president of the association said it was the best acceptance speech he'd heard in years. I exchanged a glance with Nathan, the sheer audacity of their behavior confirming we had made the right decision. Aren't you going to introduce us to the baby? My mother prompted when I remained silent. Her name is Lily, I said evenly. She was born on the side of Highway 16 yesterday at approximately 7:38 p.m. She weighed 6 pounds 8 ounces. I delivered her entirely alone after you abandoned me in active labor. An uncomfortable silence followed my blunt statement. We've been over this, my father sighed. We knew someone would come along eventually, and they did, obviously, since you're both here and fine. Not because of anything you did, Nathan interjected, his voice tight with controlled anger. Rebecca could have hemorrhaged. The baby could have been in distress. They could have died, but they didn't, my mother pointed out, as if that settled everything. Honestly, Rebecca has always had a flair for the dramatic. Remember when she broke her arm in 6th grade and insisted on going to the emergency room immediately, even though it disrupted Allison's piano recital? I stared at her in disbelief. It was a compound fracture. The bone was protruding through the skin. See what I mean? My mother said to Nathan with an eye roll, always exaggerating. Allison, meanwhile, had moved to the window, taking selfies with her award. "Do you mind if I post a few pictures with the baby?" she asked casually. "Everyone's asking for updates on my new niece. Great publicity timing, actually." Something snapped inside me, not in a way that made me lose control, but rather in a way that solidified my resolve completely. "No," I said clearly. "You may not take pictures with my daughter for your social media." Allison looked up, genuinely surprised by my refusal. "Why not?" "Because you left her mother to die on the side of a road, so you wouldn't be late to receive that." I nodded toward the award she was clutching. "You don't get to use her now to enhance your public image." "That's ridiculous," my mother cut in. "We're family." Of course Allison should have pictures with her niece. Being family is about more than shared DNA, I replied calmly. It's about caring for each other, supporting each other, being there when it matters most. Yesterday was a moment when I needed my family more than I ever have in my life. "And what did you do?" "You drove away." "We've apologized for that," my father said stiffly, though in fact none of them had actually said the words. "I'm sorry. No, you haven't. You've made excuses. You've minimized what happened. You've acted like I was inconveniencing you by going into labor." "Well, the timing was inconsiderate," Allison muttered, still focused on her phone. "You knew how important this weekend was for me." Nathan made a strangled sound of disbelief. I placed a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let me handle this. "I've been thinking a lot about yesterday," I continued steadily, "about being left alone at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life, about delivering my own baby with no help, no support, no medical care." I reached for my phone on the bedside table. "I've also been thinking about how to make sure you understand the gravity of what you did." "What do you mean?" My mother's voice took on a note of weariness. I pulled up the voice recording app and pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. "We knew someone would stop eventually. There's no need for this attitude. We're family." Then my father, "What's done is done. Allison wants to meet her niece." And finally, "Allison, the timing was inconsiderate. You knew how important this weekend was for me." I stopped the recording and looked up at their shocked faces. "I recorded our call yesterday." "I've recorded this conversation too." "You can't do that," my father protested. "That's invasion of privacy. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording." And I consented. I informed him. "I've also given a full statement to the hospital about being abandoned in active labor, without means of communication or transportation." "What are you saying?" My mother's voice had lost its usual confident edge. "I'm saying that what you did constitutes criminal negligence at minimum, child endangerment at worst. The hospital is legally obligated to report it to authorities." Their expressions shifted from shock to alarm. "You wouldn't?" my mother breathed. "Where are your parents?" "Parents who left their daughter to give birth alone on the side of a highway." Nathan reminded them, his voice hard. "Think about what this would do to our reputations." My father said urgently to Allison's career. Allison finally looked up from her phone, genuine fear crossing her face. "You can't be serious. Do you know what kind of publicity this would generate? I could lose everything." "I was thinking the same thing yesterday," I replied quietly as I delivered my baby alone, wondering if either of us would survive. I thought about everything I could lose. The room fell silent except for Lily's soft breathing from the bassinet. "What do you want?" my father finally asked, his businessman instincts taking over to drop the charges. "What do you want in return?" I looked at each of them in turn. These people who shared my blood but had never truly seen me. "I want acknowledgement," I said simply, "real acknowledgement of what you did and why it was wrong. Not excuses, not minimizing, not changing the subject." To Allison's accomplishments. "I want you to understand that your actions could have resulted in the death of your daughter and granddaughter." I paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "I want an apology, a real one that shows you understand the harm you caused. And I want change, concrete changes in how you treat me, how you treat Nathan, and how you will treat Lily moving forward." "And if we do all that," my mother asked cautiously, "then I'll tell the hospital I don't wish to pursue charges. But this is your only chance. If you ever again treat me or my family as an afterthought, if you ever again prioritize Allison's convenience over our well-being, we will be done permanently." Allison scoffed. "You're bluffing. You've never stood up to them before." "I've never had a daughter to protect before," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "I will not let Lily grow up feeling the way I did. I won't let her believe she matters less than her cousins or anyone else. Something in my voice or expression must have convinced them of my sincerity, because the atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. What would this acknowledgement entail? My father asked hesitantly. First, I want you to truly listen as I tell you what yesterday was like for me. No interruptions, no excuses, no changing the subject. Just listen and try to understand what I experienced. They nodded, somewhat reluctantly. Then I want each of you to tell me, in your own words, what you did wrong and why it was harmful. Not what you think I want to hear, but what you genuinely understand about your actions. I looked directly at Allison. That includes you. You were part of the decision to leave me there. She glanced away, unable to meet my eyes. And finally, I want us to establish clear boundaries moving forward. How you will respect my family, how you will treat Lily as equal to any other grandchildren or nieces you may have, how you will make space for all of us rather than continuing to center everything around Allison. My mother looked like she wanted to object, but caught herself. And you'll give us time to process all this. You have until the hospital discharge paperwork is finalized, I said firmly. About 4 hours from now, I suggest you use that time too. Really think about what happened and what kind of relationship you want with me and my family going forward. You can wait in the hospital cafeteria, Nathan suggested, his tone making it clear this wasn't really a suggestion. We need some time with our daughter. My father looked like he might argue, but instead he nodded stiffly. We'll be back in a few hours. As they filed out, Allison paused at the door, looking back with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought she might say something, perhaps offer the first genuine apology of the day. Instead, she just followed our parents without a word. When the door closed behind them, Nathan moved to sit beside me on the bed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I'm proud of you, he said softly. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, leaning into his embrace, but it was necessary. For Lily, we both looked at our daughter, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the momentous shifts taking place around her. Do you think they'll actually change? Nathan asked, after a moment. I don't know, I answered honestly, but either way we will. That cycle of neglect ends with me. For the first time since giving birth, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. Whatever happened next, I had found my voice and my strength. I had drawn a line that I would not allow anyone to cross again. For myself, for Nathan, and most of all for Lily. 2 years passed more quickly than I could have imagined. Lily's second birthday party was in full swing in our backyard, the late June sunshine warming the colorful decorations that Nathan had spent hours arranging. Our daughter toddled between guests, her dark curls bouncing, accepting cuddles and compliments with a shy smile that melted my heart every time. She looks more like you every day, Stephanie commented, helping me arrange cupcakes on a tray. My best friend had been my rock through everything, stepping up with unquestioning support when I needed it most. Poor kid, I joked, but secretly I was pleased. Nathan always said Lily had my eyes and determination, traits I had once undervalued, but now recognized as strengths. I glanced across the yard to where my parents were chatting with Nathan's family. The path to this moment had been neither straight nor easy, but we had all traveled it with more honesty than I would have thought possible. 2 years ago, after our confrontation in the hospital, my parents had returned as promised, subdued and unusually thoughtful. My mother spoke first, her voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. We've been talking, she said, perching awkwardly on the edge of the visitor's chair. About yesterday, about everything really. What followed was the first genuine conversation I could remember having with my parents. They listened, really listened. As I described the terror and pain of being abandoned, the desperate struggle to deliver Lily safely, the profound betrayal I had felt at their hands. My father wept openly, something I had never seen before. I don't know how we convinced ourselves it was acceptable to leave you there, he admitted. There's no excuse, none at all. Even Allison, after initial resistance, eventually acknowledged her role. I've always been the center of attention, she said, quietly. I never thought about what that meant for you. I never considered that while I was getting everything, you were getting nothing. Their apologies weren't perfect. There were still moments of defensiveness, of falling back into old patterns. But there was also real remorse, real recognition of the harm they had caused. We established boundaries that day, clear expectations for how we would interact moving forward. I made it explicit that Lily would never experience the favoritism, That had defined my childhood. My parents agreed to family therapy, a suggestion that would have been unthinkable before. The first year was difficult. Old habits died hard. There were tense conversations, setbacks, moments when I considered cutting contact entirely. But there was also genuine effort, particularly from my father, who seemed most deeply affected by the realization of what they had done. Now, 2 years later, we had reached a place of cautious optimism. Not perfect, not always easy, but functional in a way our family had never been before. Cake time. Nathan called, carrying Lily to her special chair at the head of the table. Everyone gathered around, cameras ready. As I brought out the butterfly-shaped cake. We had stayed up late decorating. As we sang happy birthday, I caught sight of Eric, my younger brother, standing slightly apart from the group. After years of minimal contact, he had reconnected with me following Lily's birth, drawn by the story of how I had finally stood up to our parents. Over the past 2 years, we had rebuilt our relationship, supporting each other as we both established healthier dynamics with the rest of the family. Make a wish, sweetheart, I encouraged Lily, helping her lean forward to blow out the candles. The gathered friends and family applauded, and I felt Nathan's arm slip around my waist, a silent acknowledgement of how far we had come. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, my mother approached me as I was cleaning up discarded wrapping paper. Rebecca, she said hesitantly, I wanted to give you something. She handed me a small box, neatly wrapped. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When I opened it, I found a tiny photograph of Lily on one side and one of me as a baby on the other. I've been doing a lot of thinking, my mother said, uncharacteristically nervous. About what you said in the hospital, about how we made you feel growing up. I found this picture of you recently, and I realized I couldn't remember much about you at this age. I was so focused on Allison's competitions, her needs, that I missed so much with you and Eric. She touched the locket gently. I don't want to make the same mistake with Lily. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I don't know my granddaughter because I was too busy focusing on someone else. I was speechless, unprepared for this moment of vulnerability from a woman who had always seemed so certain of her choices. We can't change the past, she continued when I didn't respond. I know that, but I hope we can build something better going forward. I closed the locket, feeling its weight in my palm. I'd like that, I said finally, for Lily's sake, and for all of us. My mother nodded, blinking rapidly against unexpected tears. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was honest progress. As the last guest departed, I found myself sitting on the back porch steps, watching Lily play with her new toys under Nathan's watchful eye. Allison dropped down beside me, unusually quiet. Our relationship had been the slowest to heal, complicated by decades of imbalance that neither of us had created, but both had participated in. The therapy sessions had revealed how the favoritism had damaged her too, creating unrealistic expectations and an unhealthy sense of entitlement that had affected her adult relationships. She's amazing, Allison said, nodding toward Lily. Smart, like her mom. I smiled, accepting the compliment without deflection, another skill I had been working on. She is pretty incredible. I've been offered a teaching position, Allison said suddenly. The community college, less prestigious than my corporate job, but I think I might like helping others succeed instead of always chasing the next achievement myself. That sounds like a good change, I replied, genuinely pleased for her. She nodded, watching Lily. I want to be a good aunt to her. The kind who shows up for dance recitals and school plays, who remembers birthdays without being reminded. I'd like that for her, I said. She should know her family, all of her family. As the evening settled around us, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. From that terrifying moment on the highway to this peaceful birthday celebration, I had traversed a landscape of pain, rage, forgiveness, and ultimately growth. The birth story I would one day tell Lily would include the painful truth of her entry into the world, but it would also include the transformative power of that moment, how it had finally given me the strength to demand the respect I deserved, to break cycles of favoritism and neglect, to build the family I had always longed for. My parents and Allison had been forced to face the consequences of their actions that day. The threat of legal action had initially been what made them listen, but the potential loss of relationship with me and Lily had ultimately been what motivated genuine change. They had begged for forgiveness, not just with words, but with consistent actions over time, I had made them face what they had done, yes. But more importantly, I had faced myself, my worth, my strength, my capacity to create boundaries and demand better. In giving birth to Lily under those impossible circumstances, I had also, in a way, given birth to a new version of myself, a version that would never again accept being treated as less than, that would fight fiercely to ensure my daughter grew up knowing her value was intrinsic and unconditional. That would create a family defined by love rather than comparison. Mama, Lily called, running toward me with arms outstretched, her face alight with joy. I scooped her up, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, feeling her small arms wrapped tightly around my neck. In this embrace was everything I had ever wanted and everything I was now determined to protect. The cycle was broken, the healing had begun, and the road ahead, while not without its challenges, stretched before us full of possibility. What moments in your life have forced you to stand up for yourself? Have you ever had to draw a hard boundary with family for your own well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better. Remember, sometimes the most difficult moments in our lives become the catalysts for our greatest transformations. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to create the life and relationships you truly deserve.